The Explain Yourself podcast.
Crypto companies don't understand when they transition from traditional companies is that we do have ebbs and flows. It's not necessarily doing things by the book. It's taking the opportunity in front of you and running with it. We had a mission to get Bitcoiners in person because that's really where our industry was created. That's where our industry thrives.
Chris, thank you for coming on the Explain Yourself podcast. Will you please explain yourself for us?
My name is Chris Smith. I've been in crypto since 2016, 2017, directly out of college, started working at Bitcoin Magazine and the Bitcoin Conference, led PR, marketing, community efforts there for a couple of years, and still very involved over there and what they're doing with the Bitcoin Conference. Recently ventured out into crypto and traditional media a little bit more, doing PR stuff, really catering to the B2B audience and getting them distribution in general. One thing that I'm really focused on is really curating a strategy with people that make sense for what they're trying to accomplish in not only the short term, but the kind of the full spec of a bull cycle. I think that one thing that crypto companies don't understand when they transition from traditional companies is that we do have ebbs and flows in the cycle, and it's important to capitalize on the moment. When you get that momentum, run with it. And there's only kind of a couple people who really have experience doing that. And that's something that we've been able to cater to different companies around the industry. And that's the main thesis of our strategy. It's not necessarily doing things by the book. It's taking the opportunity in front of you and running with it.
What? We've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
I know you super well. I don't even know why you got into crypto to begin with. What happened?
Wow, that's an interesting story. I'll start from the beginning. So in 2014, I was running I was basically the chief of staff for a conglomerate company that was developing out different Minecraft servers around the world. So we had different companies like Hive, other companies, subcategory companies under Mojang. And at the time I was young, I was still in high school, but I was an internet native and I was utilizing kind of my skills of understanding kind of the digital landscape while also being on the upper edge of communications within kind of the digital gaming realm. So back before there was Discord, in between Skype, there was a thing called TeamSpeak. And for about 2 to 3 years between kind of Skype's downfall and the rise of Discord, everyone was on TeamSpeak. So that's where all the deal flow happened. So I met a couple of founders of some very large servers. They were actively developing Java plugins to basically create kind of this kind of World of Warcraft style of game infrastructure. But the reason I got into Bitcoin was I was in charge of actually making payroll for these companies to all of their developers. The developers in the US were very easy to settle up with. You could just use PayPal. Everybody had a PayPal account if they were a US citizen. Now, our best developers, they were not in the US. They were either in Southern America or Africa. And you cannot send PayPal to those developers. So at the time, I really didn't know the infrastructure or the technology that I was interacting with. But a couple of years later, I realized that I was actually settling up with all of these developers via Bitcoin, using Bitcoin on-chain wallets and sending them kind of their payment for what they were doing for us developer wise over Bitcoin. This was very common in the Minecraft industry, and it's still not reported on to this day. No one from a first point of view landscape has actually come out and explained that Bitcoin was a very large part of the Minecraft developer industry. So that's how I got into Bitcoin. A couple of years later, when I went to college, I had resurfaced some of those relationships and realized that we had been using a Bitcoin wallet back when Bitcoin was less than $10. So we were sitting on a lot of unused Bitcoin at the time was just pennies on the dollar for us. We discovered a couple of old wallets. We're able to get back into those and get those into cold storage really quickly. So once the realization happened of what we were dealing with and the opportunity that was in front of us, we quickly, like I said, put those Bitcoin in cold storage, and I've been utilizing that as funding ever since. So that's how I got into Bitcoin. When I was in college, I was actively trading Bitcoin because I was a finance nerd. Computer science has always been something of interest to me. And I guess that's the short story of it. I was in college already interested in Bitcoin due to that kind of firsthand exposure. Went to a Bitcoin meetup in Nashville, Tennessee, met the founders of Bitcoin Magazine, and I guess you know from there what happened, but we started the Bitcoin conference back in San Diego. We then moved it to Miami in 2020 because of COVID. And what happened there was really no state or no city in America or really in the world would host a conference at that scale. If you remember the Bitcoin 2021 conference, it was 12,000 people. And by the way, like 11,000 of those tickets sold within the last month before the conference. So it was
That's
really a lesson in
that's
not yeah, it was wild because no one even knew if they could travel. It was literally in the middle of COVID. Everybody was freaking out over all the mandates and things, but we had a mission to get Bitcoiners in person because that's really where our industry was created. That's where our industry thrives.
yeah, that's after so it was 20 you had 12,000 in 2020?
It was the 2020 conference, but it got moved to 2021. Yeah, it was the year that
That's
Tony Hawk came. It was before the 22 conference, which was the big one, the 26,000 person one in Miami.
like you really exponentially had grown since then.
Yes.
That's really impressive because the last conference, like after that, so the following year, wasn't it like 30,000? And you have
Yeah. So in 2021, it
over
was,
doubled.
sorry.
You over doubled. Like,
Yes, we over doubled by a lot. I would almost 3x what we had, or I guess 3x from 12,000 to almost 30. Kind of the next year, which was right after the peak of the bull market. And I think we probably would have had more in 2021 if there wasn't such a daunting, kind of overwhelming fear of COVID and mandates, especially people from international companies, European and Asian companies really scared to actually come into the US or not even allowed to. Their visas weren't getting accepted. There were a lot of nightmares we had to deal with. But by the time 2022 came around, a lot of those mandates had decreased, especially in Florida, which was why Miami was so important to us. Mayor Francis Flores was really by our side during the whole time. And his administration and his office in Miami is absolutely incredible. We would not have been able to pull off what we did if it wasn't for them.
yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys really pulled it off. What do
Thank
you
you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was super impressive. What do you think was like one of your best or maybe one of your most unique strategies that you use?
I would say in 2022, we redid the idea of what a press room and just media relations in general at an in-person event was. The hardest part about that wasn't actually the strategy. It was reconvincing people that in-person engagement was of utmost importance. Even though it had only been a year and a half since COVID had started, people had already become so consistent in this mindset of doing everything online, even networking, meetings with executives, meetings between companies, really B2B relations had immediately had to change to online facing first and foremost. Even when you went to a coffee with an executive, everyone had a mask on, right? So it took the personal feel out of it. So what we had to do was come up with kind of a way to bring that energy back to utilizing and getting deals and getting media relations over the line in person. So we started with creating just kind of a portal between the sponsors, the companies that were there, and the media to be able to reconnect with each other. So we hit up all of our sponsors, all of the major companies that were there, and we said, this is basically the CES of crypto. You need to make a product announcement at our event. And our kind of opportunity for them in order to spend so much resources on this announcement was that we were going to take the teaser of their announcement and we were going to go pitch the medias for them. So not only do the medias who are attending get this amazing coverage, the sponsors now have a value add that is really unheard of. So it was great for both parties, and we were really just the middleman. And in hindsight, it was such a good strategy, but in the moment, it was really hard to pull off.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know you did that. That's really smart. I didn't know that's why you changed the location from Nashville to Miami to Nashville again.
So we were in San Francisco in 2019, which in 2019, San Francisco was the hub of crypto. Undoubtedly, Silicon Valley had a lot of even the VC funding in A16Z, Horowitz, all of the largest funders and the largest developers in the crypto space were all in California. After COVID hit, California was a lockdown wasteland. There was nothing to accomplish there.
Oh,
So
I
we
see.
were actively looking at Texas, Tennessee, Florida. And like I said, the Mayor Francis Suarez office came to us and said, we do not like COVID. We want you to bring your conference here. And the city of Miami welcomed us with open arms. And 3 years in a row, we had our conference there 2021, 2022, and 2023. After 2023, we decided that we don't want to, or the Bitcoin conference at the time decided that they didn't want to be a conference that couldn't move. Everyone wouldn't call it or wouldn't call them the Bitcoin conference. They called it Bitcoin Miami. And that was great in the interim, but it wanted to be a place that could go to Vegas next year, that could go to Miami last year, that could really bring crypto throughout the kind of American region and then also expand internationally. So that was the thesis behind being able to take the conference and move. And also, just to add, Nashville, if you, I guess you've been now, is truly the land of the free. Even during the COVID times, there were not a ton of people who were wearing masks. Everybody had a positive outlook, a positive just attitude towards being able to get back together in person. And overall, the state of Tennessee really resounds freedom and sound money values, which obviously the Bitcoiners who are there also share that sentiment, right? So it made a lot of sense. And looking back at what happened just a month ago in Nashville, it was perfect. The stars really aligned.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think people really realize that because it's still thought of as like the Bitcoin Miami conference, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I know like the leadership, David and Brandon really wanted to make sure that they could, and I think they did a really good job establishing that last year with the move to Nashville. And then next year, the conference being in Vegas is going to be a blast. I'm excited. So
Yeah, that will be fun. So you're really interested in helping people who've been in the traditional market. Makes sense given your background. Like you have this like this very smart sort of background. So you have an understanding of the traditional market and you're helping them get more into crypto or figure out how to become relevant in this new money market, right?
sure. Yeah, that's a pretty fair way to put it. I think that traditional marketing in general is a landscape that has seen a lot of different transitions over the period of, let's say, the last 30 years between the dot-com bubble, the recession in 2008, and even the latest maneuver between COVID, digital assets, and being able to adapt to the current landscape. I know you mentioned off call that we were talking about how getting in front of the 40+ year olds, it's a little difficult because they still operate in such kind of a legacy system. Like also they have touch points into this new digital era. So how do you properly balance that from a kind of marketing point of view from a company? And I think that strategy, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but it's ultimately about establishing who your kind of prime customer is and meeting them where they are. Depending on different initiatives and different marketing campaigns, you could really see a variety of ways to actually go about and accomplish that goal. But the most important part is actually realizing what you're trying to accomplish through that initiative. And from there, everything's a little bit easier. One thing that I've noticed in crypto is that we are not in the 2018 market anymore. There's not a lot of organic coverage. Even when you look at influencers, Ben actually does a great job at this as he's so organic, but most influencers in this market are very pay to play. Even medias, if you look at every crypto media, I have every crypto media kit on my computer right now. It's all pay to play. Organic coverage in crypto hardly exists anymore. So how do you play the field with that kind of being the case while also still trying to hit the legacy financial system. And what you have to do is not to just give out my playbook per se, but you need to understand what they are looking for. And there's certain things within kind of the human appetite that has not changed in the last 100 years and will not change. And that's the average investor, especially if you're a consumer facing asset, is looking for financial gain. You could have the greatest buzzwords in the world. You could have a PR marketing strategy. You could go on every media in the world. But if you're not establishing a playbook that ultimately people feel confident that they will gain digital purchasing power, then you're going to be missing out on a very large opportunity. And if that consumer that gets you to that goal is above 40, then you really need to cater to that person. People trash newsletters all the time, especially in the crypto space. They say the only way to get in front of the crypto audience is through X or through Twitter. The only way is to do Twitter spaces. And however, I do think that is a very good strategy. There's still very applicable avenues that can get you to your goal without being on Twitter at all. I know very profitable companies in the crypto space who do not spend hardly any money at all getting in front of the X audience. They're still operating very traditionally through cold email outreach, active newsletters, actually picking up the phone and calling somebody, setting up proper meetings in person, going to events, really utilizing that B2B era. And though you do need to adapt digitally as a company to survive, you can have backbones and base layers in your strategy that do not dismiss what has always worked and what will always work. And if you're in front of a person face to face and you really are able to pitch them on your idea and sell them on your vision, and be able to close that person on what you are trying to demonstrate to them in person, it's going to take you 10 Google Meet calls to what you could accomplish 15 minutes in person. So my advice to a lot of companies is if you think you're doing enough events, you probably need to be doing double that. Some events are not going to be as successful as others, and that's okay. Half the time you're getting your employees and your company experience and legwork in the war zone and being able to have them more confident when the prime opportunity comes. So even though one deal may go south, or you go to an event and you set up 10 meetings and none of them close, that's okay. You are equipping your company and your employees with the ability to execute on when the opportunity comes.
Okay, so I'm completely on board with everything that you're talking about. If sometimes people may say, I went to this event and I paid all this money and nothing came of it. What is the time frame though of if something was successful or not, right? Like how would you what do you think is a good metric to measure by where you're spending your time as a business owner?
Sure, I have a realistic answer. With an event strategy, I always operate quarterly. So you have your follow ups after your event. The sooner the better, right? You're touching people in person, but that touch point evaporates after 3 months. So at that point, it really is important to keep a CRM. I always keep a CRM on me. Who are my important relationships? When is the last time I touched them? What events are they going to be going to? How can I get in front of them again? People in the crypto space, most high level executives of very important companies are getting hundreds of emails a day. They're getting hundreds of telegrams a day. Just because they showed a ton of interest in you in person and maybe feel dismissive online does not mean that they've dismissed you entirely. You probably left a great impression with them. They're just extremely distracted by other things. Go be proactive and get in front of them again. Do not feel discouraged that maybe your first touch point didn't go as planned. The more patient you are, the more reward you have at the end anyway. And ultimately, it's just going to get you more experience. So don't break your bank on events, but make sure you implement a strategy where overall in person, face to face is something that's very important to you and you're actively thinking about increasing.
Tell me if I'm wrong. A lot of people in this world, more than like anybody, I would guess. What do you think? Do you feel like this is true? Do you think that people in the traditional markets are way more willing to start doing these sort of like new age marketing strategies versus the reverse, where, say, like people who are maybe starting a new business and I don't know, the new age 2021, very difficult to go into more like new media. Are they able to understand the maybe benefits?
I think it, a multi-layered question. I think there's a separation between traditional market between like privately traded and publicly traded. I've seen a very large increase in the appetite for new media marketing between privately funded and owned companies, which I think is funny because that gets you down a rabbit hole, of course, with kind of who's actually funding most of the publicly traded companies and everything. And we don't have to get into that now. But there's so much B2B activity in the privately traded space, and I know I'm very Bitcoin dominant. I've been Bitcoin only for a very long time, but there's such a bullish narrative right now in the RWA space in crypto that is really hard to ignore. And I actually encourage a lot of the kind of Bitcoin only crowd to take a secondary look at this. I'm not saying that we have to create a new token and put it on Solana and market it as an RWA, but have no utility at all. But even if it doesn't have a token, look at these blockchain centric projects that are taking private equity and putting them on chain to where you can actually trade SpaceX, you could trade Twitter, you could trade these companies that you've always wanted to get involved in. This is just the tip of the spear of RWAs. And I know there's a very strong narrative happening. And I think this is the bull market for those assets to at least achieve a market cap to where people can start to talk about them. I think the utility will come. But I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but that's where my mind goes when you think about old age kind of strategies are interacting with new age media. Look at these companies that are privately funded. Look at kind of what they're doing. I think you'd probably be surprised at the amount of spin that a lot of these companies are using, literally just getting like basketball influencers on Instagram to just be representative of their brand. And there's a lot of companies as well that are traditionally even funded that are bringing in new staffers specifically around the marketing community aspects to get in front of the younger generation. And the reason they're doing that isn't because the younger generation has a lot of capital to it's because the younger generation has absolutely capitalized the opportunity of distribution, widespread distribution worldwide. And the Generation Z, the millennials, no, they do not have the deep pockets that the older generation does, but they smoke the older generation on distribution. You have YouTubers that have an iPhone and a good idea, and they will smoke CNBC all day, every day. And I love CNBC. Kate Rudy, all their evil. It's great. I'm not bashing CNBC. I'm more deriving a point that we are at the distribution channels in the world and being able to get in front of somebody's eyes are not as centralized as they used to be. There's a lot of opportunity in the market. You just have to get a little creative.
What other trends do you see now that you're surprised by?
Trends just within marketing in general, distribution.
Yeah, that you think maybe are here to stay.
I think that the trend of 3 to 5 minute videos and people, I won't say trend to say, here's an observation I have had recently. Right now, we are living in the day and age due to TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Reels, that people have a hard time paying attention for more than 3 minutes. If you actually look at the data, after 3 minutes of any video, the cutoff is over 80%, which is considered a very drastic cutoff. I think that trend will actually reverse because I don't think that is a sustainable model due to the chemistry makeup of what is in the human kind of biology. So if you look at why that has happened originally, it's because we've closed the gap on what is interesting and there's not enough talking points. As fiat systems erode society in general, the attention span has gone down. As society adapts to stronger reserve currencies, it's actually established that the attention span will go up. And the reason for that, and it's a very funny parallel, is just that human kind of physiognomy in general is such a complex system on the outside, but on the inside, it's very simple in that people want to improve their livelihood and the livelihood of their family and people they care. Really, people want to have fun. And a lot of things that they find interesting now, just because those require short time frames, doesn't mean that it's not utilizing the same chemistry makeup as long form content. So I think as the intellectual and the where you say like the alpha, where someone will learn a lot, goes back into long form content, the actual attention span of the average society member will then follow. So that's a trend that I've seen. Everybody, as even a YouTube video or an interview, like most people will not be following along this interview at this point, right? Realistically speaking, they would have either tuned off or but as the thought leaders of the world reinvent and I guess, push that strategy into being able to explain and utilize proper education, that trend will reverse. So that's my out of the pocket take for that.
Interesting. You had me worried thinking that you were going to say that the trend is going to go to 30 seconds. And then
I don't think so. I don't think so. That's not what my thesis is.
yeah, that's super interesting. It'd be interesting to chart that out based on people's maybe even like their fear for the time versus like how much of a video that they're watching.
Yeah, and I don't think people feel necessarily fulfilled after being stimulated for a short period of time. It's instant gratification, but it's not joyful fulfillment. And I think that the human chemistry makeup ultimately wants to achieve joy. You see a lot in kind of the crypto where like the American dream is really a long term success, right? And crypto totally destroyed that, but it's rebuilding that back. And it's fun to see. So I could totally be wrong about this, but this is just my little opinion.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So if say like somebody needs help with marketing, they just want to they need help with strategy or anything, or they just want to connect with you, where could they find you?
Yes, I love Telegram. Everybody loves Telegram. My Telegram is at Chris Smith BTC. I can also throw my LinkedIn in the description. I'm very traditional. The Telegram, LinkedIn, we'll have a website up and running soon. We're still early stages. Almost all of my relationships have just been made in person and people who are my friends. I absolutely put the pinnacle of my success on in-person relationships. And that's a very majority of what I talked about today, but it's true. And those are the people that I really take good care of, and they take good care of me, and it's great.
Yeah, you're like a wealth of information. I really like talking to you. So
Thank you, Data. Thank you for having me on. This has been great.
yeah, likewise. I hope to see you soon.